Yeah.
Not a solution anyone wants, and yet somehow slow motion car wreck. That is where we're heading.
Well, there's always terrorism as a solution, like like domestic terrorism, Bo. Not that we want to go about that road again, from your old days.
Is this Skype recording?
No, it's not recording.
It auto transcripts and saves and shares any and all audio evidence.
They already have it then. It almost doesn't even matter if I leave it on or not because the damage is done, I'm afraid. Well, I guess this is as good a time as any. I'm here with Bo Kyer, the art director of the Drabblecast for many a year here. Bo, how are you doing?
I am well. Hello, everyone.
Yes, Bo, I was just looking through like when we met and how long it's been, but I had to go to our old Yahoo account because that's where we started with our formal businessy stuff to look at our first emails. Yahoo, man, I mean, that's crazy. It was that far back, and I saw the date was 2007, so we've known each other for 24 years.
Yeah, it's wild when you really start to put a timeline on it.
Yeah. That's way too fucking long to know somebody like in this kind of setting. But I don't know. I guess that's literally longer than I know most people other than my family.
Yeah, and most people I don't think would think of podcasting, the medium, as having existed in 2007, let alone people starting to network and form collections of mutual fandom in 2007. So it is wild.
It was, yeah. I mean, so Tuesday, October 16th in 2007, you sent this email. It says, "Hello again. It's Bo Kyer, an individual you may recall from my depictions of Telephant, Death Mole, Hippopotapane, and Crab Louie." Because this is when we were doing the season 1 of the death match, the Super Animal Mega Beast death match, where we would get drunk and make up animals and debate with fury which one would win if given an opportunity to fight. And it turned into 4 fucking seasons of that crap. And it was, but anyway, you were excited. And you were doing this art for us, and your email continues. "I was given the general, hey, what if we did another round nudge after my first submission, so I figured I'd follow this in spirit." And you sent us a link to some more, and we were like, holy crap.
Yeah.
This is when Kendall and Luke were also editors, and I wrote back pretty much immediately, just, dude, holy crap, these are sweet. So sweet. I can't even describe it. It's like you just made all my dreams come true. I'm crying right now. We should chat. Do you use AIM? Hit up Norm Sherman if you do. So yeah, this is also in the AIM days.
And thus became an illicit communication series that ultimately led me to doing torrid and horrible things. Yeah, no, it's funny because I genuinely came from the community. I think Facebook was the way I reached out because you were just describing these things that to my mind were begging to be turned into art, and I just had to share. So that was my start to all this. Is I came out of the community. I remember Sarah Ely introduced the Drabblecast on an early, well, not an early for Escape Pod, but early for Drabblecast. I joined at around The Worm Within, which I think is like episode 17. It's forever ago. And I do recommend, if anybody's starting fresh, to go all the way back. Episode 25, because that's a trial by fire and a true Drabblecast experience of just intestinal distress and parasites. And if you listen to that and want more, then you're a true initiate.
Oh, the zigzag. Yeah, the zigzag feeling of a worm being pulled out from inside from out. It's just the description of that is something that you'll never forget. Fortunately, I guess. Unfortunately, I don't know. You can see that both ways. It's nuts, though. Yeah, that was a lot. That was a volatile year. A lot of our stories were that kind of story, and they still kind of are. But those early days were, I guess our teen years. We were kind of awkward back then, and we love them, we cherish them. But it's neat that you kind of jumped on board then as the snowball was getting bigger, and gradually we just figured like, hey, I don't know how specifically the idea for having episode cover art, because we were always kind of trying to be an audio magazine, and that was like the opportunity was to showcase some art. Do you remember whenever you kind of started doing the cover art for us?
Yeah, I was trying to retroactively figure that out. So I know one of the reasons I was so drawn to the Drabblecast is because you always took care to make the M4A actually have visual chapters, and I just don't think a lot of podcasters even cared to do that. And it was like I was back on a laptop at work looking at it in iTunes and seeing it change, and I just always enjoyed that visual attention to detail. I think, trying to piece it back together, it was around when Hello Said the Stick was introduced, and Josh Tweedy Hugo had his own art on there. And I think in a fit of jealousy, I was just like, well, I could be making art for this. I had the idea to do art for this. And then I proposed the idea of just doing regular covers to you. So it was roughly around episode 136, I think, is the first, because I think I debuted it and it was for the Great Pumpkin. I found that one. It was one of my like all Photoshop kind of joints where it was like a pumpkin mixed with available footage, available imagery of an octopus.
Mm.
But all the way back to then, and I did the first few, but was immediately reaching out to members of the community to do their own. So it started inauspiciously, or I don't even know. It started at that point.
Yeah, that's right. So we were doing cover art a little bit before you. I remember I was kind of slapping together art, and or just grabbing images that were whatever free online, and then I did a call for some help, and I think Josh Tweedy, yeah, some community members stepped in and were doing some, but then it kind of coalesced whenever you kind of, because we knew you had those chops from the Mega Beast stuff, and that was just it was. But we had a whole backlog of like a lot of stories in the back that we never had art for, and then you started the the Reclamation Project, was that called?
Yeah, what's funny is in looking this up, I found out, and I'm going to rectify this soon after this episode, but if you look at number 122, The Fall and the Muse of the Street, you can see this like placeholder billboard art I put in there that's just basically like, hey, we want artists. Do you want your art here? Check out bowkire.com/darp to find out more details. And I don't know, I probably did 30 some odd DARP episodes, and like a lot of people contributed some really good ones. So I mean, I always have this like, if people were listening in real time, they missed out on these. I imagine that's not as many people. So they might as well just be the past. But yeah, I always really loved that. That was my personal George Lucasing of our past, that, we had art since the very first episode. Some things I want lost to time, not that.
Right. Yeah, so we're going to go through some of these stories here. We've kind of got it divided into two sections with the stories that we thought kind of had notable cover art or things to talk about, and we'll listen to chunks and kind of talk about it that are not by Bo, that were divvied out to community members, volunteers, and then we've got some that Bo did specifically. We'll go through and kind of hear what I'm interested to know, kind of what your process is when you kind of jump into doing art, or what an artist's thinking whenever they're listening to a story and trying to come together with ideas. I've always kind of audio has been my space, not the visual stuff. So I've always been jealous of you guys.
I'm nodding vigorously.
All right. Up here, I think one of the images that an artist really nailed that has kind of become an icon of the story was Mongoose back in Drabblecast 170 that Gerald Dye did. And he just nailed this, at least I thought, this visual representation. It had never been represented, the creature that is in Mongoose. And what a neat interpretation for it. So we'll start off with this here.
There were a lot of ghillies in Kadath's hallways, and they all stopped to blink at Mongoose. Irizarry felt one of Mongoose's tendrils work itself through two of his earrings. Although she didn't understand staring exactly, her compound eyes made the idea alien to her. She felt the attention, and was made shy by it. Unlike the Boojum ships they serviced, the stations, Providence, Kadath, Lang, Dunwich, and the others, were man-made. Their radial symmetry was predictable, and to find the station master, Irizarry only had to work his way inward from the Manfred von Richthofen's dock to the hub. There he found one of the inevitable safety maps. You are here. In case of decompression, proceed in an orderly manner to the life vaults located here, here, or here, and leaned close to squint at the tiny lettering. Mongoose copied him, tilting her head first one way, then another, though flat representations meant nothing to her. Finally, he made out Station Master's office on an oval bubble, the door of which was actually in sight. "Here we go, girl," he said to Mongoose, who, stone-deaf though she was, pressed against him in response to the vibration of his voice. He hated this part of the job. Hated dealing with apparatchiks and functionaries, and of course, the station master's office was full of them.
Yeah, we did this one full cast. All the parts were cast out. It's just epic. I tried to make it sound like Ridley Scott's Aliens. And was this the first piece that Gerald did for us?
I don't know specifically on that one. I'd have to go back. I know it became the eventual cover for our print anthology because we both love it so much. It's just so cool because it's so immediately kind of confrontational. It's like looking straight at you. It has that wonderful kind of like spiral of the tentacles going out in the background. And that story was just so visually rich. It just kind of begged for it to be depicted in some way. So that's like the exact kind of story where it's like, this needs and deserves some type of visual interpretation.
Absolutely, yeah. And this had so many other creatures. Like this part here has the
old records and the
Bandersnatch, because the whole the world of this space opera has got different creatures like from Lewis Carroll and H.P. Lovecraft that are all kind of intertwined. So Mongoose is actually a good guy. It's a good little creature that's kind of, I was thinking when I originally was listening and reading the story as kind of a cat-like little, like a mongoose, it kind of acts like that. So the neat cephalopod edition was so cool to see. It really blew me away.
Yeah, because mongoose is kind of like the vaccine to the virus that is the other untamed kind of creatures from the sort of Lewis Carroll meets like dimensional thinning hellscape that is like the bestiary of that. A lot of words in there. But like, yeah, it's cute and friendly in the story, and if you do look at the art, it has a bit of a smile, but it doesn't immediately present as a friendly thing.
Yeah, he's it's tapping into the Rudyard Kipling aspect, the mongoose, the Ricky Tikki Tavi kind of thing. He's kind of like, yeah, he gets the snakes out, like you're saying, and this space station is infested with toves and things, and he's kind of crawling through there and just routing them out. I would love to see the back end of this creature of mongoose to see if it's like fish-like or what it looks like. What do you think it looks like back there?
Well, I drew it myself once for like, I think it was a Drabblecast card game. I don't even remember what it was, but I worked with like a fanning starfish kind of back. Gerald chose to like give it like little clawed hands in the front. I just like the amount of kind of like conflicting organic patterns from like the frills. I forget what they called them in the story. They were called, it's another kind of Lewis Carroll word. Oh wait, there it is, barbels. So it's like them flaring the front, has the layers of tentacles coming out of the back, and then still too has kind of like little clawed feet in the front. And there's just like, I don't know, it's one of the reasons it's so visually rich is there's just so much going on. But I did it as like something of a torpedo coming from the side. And it is because you got that front facing perspective, you'll never actually know what's on the back end of it, but that's kind of the fun of it.
Yeah, you never see the back end of a mongoose because it's coming at you from the front usually, probably too.
Yeah, I want to call out Gerald. I mean, Gerald has a whole bunch of great covers he's done for us. One of the ones I also really liked was Judgment Past, and that was kind of like this interesting and you are you. So we have many post-apocalyptic stories to pull from, but this was a religious post-apocalypse that was like, Jesus came back, he took a bunch of people, and then the narrator's kind of living in a semi-abandoned world. And Gerald drew this really nice cover that like didn't spell anything out for you. Honestly, it's just this kind of hover car bounding over a mountain road. And I always found that one to be like my personal favorite because it has the mountains that are depicted in the story. It has this sense of abandon or isolation because it's the mountains. It's surrounded by trees. It has this nice kind of send up to the religiosity of the episode because the car kind of looks like it's ascending as it kind of takes over that curb. It even has kind of a bit of like a Tex Avery exaggerated motion where it's just one of those still pieces of art that just seems to be moving just based on how you look at it. So similar, like Mongoose, you kind of can just see the tentacles writhing as you look at it. It was like he just has a great way of creating that and what he does.
Yeah, it looks like the car is, I mean, it's half being raptured almost. It's kind of riding that line between, is it kind of a car commercial or is it like actually a car kind of being sucked into the sky? And the fact that it's a hover car kind of gives you that ambiguity.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you want, because if you don't have ambiguity, why are you listening? You're like, hey, what is going on in this story? And this is like that exact kind of cover that's making you think, I actually do need to know more about what in the hell is the context of this.
Yeah, art gets to do that, it gives a still shot of that question of like, what is going on here? You get to gradually find that out when you're listening to it, but you get one little slide there of a picture to kind of ask that. This one, Jagannath, was a story that we did, episode 234. And who was the artist behind this one, Bo?
Phil Hollier. This one, one of my favorite covers and one of my absolute favorite stories.
Saved us from, mumbled Hop. Go to sleep. Have you seen it? Hop scoffed. No, and I don't want to. Neither do you. Now quiet. Rock closed her eyes, thinking of what kind of world might be outside Mother's body, but could only imagine darkness. The thought made a chill run down her back. She crept closer to Hop, nestling against her back. The workload was never constant. It had to do with where Mother went and what she ate. Times of plenty meant hard work, the peristaltic engine swelling with food. But during those times, the females also ate well. The mucus coating Mother's walls grew thick and fragrant, and Rock would put on a good layer of fat. Then Mother would move on and the food become less plentiful, her innards thinning out and the mucus drying and caking. The workers would slow down, sleep more, and wait for a change. Regardless of how much there was to eat, Rock still grew, until she looked up and realized she was no longer so small compared to the others.
Man, yeah, this is one of my top 10 favorite too, just because of how weird it is and like all the talk about mucus and insides. And yeah, I mean, just a quick recap: the Rock is a cog in the wheel, an organic wheel of Mother who's just who's this giant thing treading across this unknown world, and it's made up of these little, cells. I guess you can actually, it's almost like a James Tiptree story. But yeah, Karen Huler is the author, and it's one of her best, I think, too, one of her most popular. And Bill just killed it with a little weird fetal alien thing. Oh man,
yeah,
it's neat.
It was just the perfect marriage of artist and subject, where it's like Bill is really great at just drawing kind of organic chaos, like kind of I would say like anxiety as depicted by organic shapes. And this was kind of one of those ones where like I honestly wanted to know what somebody thought this story looked like. So when he did it, it was just such a revelation because, I pictured it as like ants inside of a whale carcass or a giant like behemoth kind of like thing striding across the landscape. There's just so many different ways to visualize it. It's just fun to have somebody do it. And he has such a great set of vibrant colors he puts into it. And it just gets you that fleshiness that the story implies in so many different ways. It's why you can kind of sense what some of my favorite covers are based on what the art and the banners on the website are, and Giganath is prominently placed.
Yeah, I love that he aired on the side of like might as well be a human fetus in there. You don't really know, and he could have gotten really weird and alien with it, but it's kind of that, like, it's a shock to hear the story after you've seen that image and be like, oh wow, they really are human. And that's kind of like a critical part of the story, is to think of each individual inside there as thinking of itself, because it's wondering what its role is in this greater context, just like a human would in there.
Yeah, and the kind of striking contrast of it being like a skeletal dead fetus that could still be gestating to be born, but also looks like it's rotting. It's just kind of impossible contrasts.
True. I didn't think about the rotting piece of it, but that's there too. And the organic, you're wondering if it's almost like a conjoined thing, if it's drawing from its surroundings, or if the surroundings are what is, prenatally giving it nourishment. And it turns out that it's kind of the latter. They're supposed to split into their own little things, but
again, like that same thing we're saying with Gerald's, it's just the ambiguity of it makes you go like, what is that's just the reaction you'd want.
Yeah. Yeah, the big thing with the story too is you're wondering, like, the little fetal things inside, like what the outside of Mother looks like, what it's going through, and you kind of hear little pieces of like this world, but it's you almost get to be a fetus, like kind of wondering what these sounds are and what the conflict is between this other thing out there, and it's slowly revealed. And this is a fun one to go back and listen to again.
No, that another one where the production of it too, it's a joy to listen to in audio because it's slowly revealing, and it's like one of those kind of stories where you kind of like want to look around and just go, is anybody hearing inside of my head right now? Because I'm going somewhere weird.
Yeah, I was on the seat of my pants, the seat of the placenta, I guess I could say. Let's dump into here with People of Sand and Slag, which we did as episode 261. This was kind of another fun post-apocalypse, I guess you could call it, or dystopian at the very least, by Pelo Bakagalupi.
We can eat anything.
This is another one that we did full cast, and it was like 4 or 5 people reading parts in this one.
You've probably got more mercury
and the art was neat. I'd love to see that.
Than any pre-weevil animal ever could have had.
That's bad.
Used to be poison.
Weird.
I think I might have broken it when I put it in the cage,
Jack said.
I don't think it's healing.
The dog did look kind of beat up. It just lay there, its sides going up and down like a bellows. Its eyes were half open, but didn't seem to be focused on any of us. When Jack made a sudden movement, it twitched for a second, but it didn't get up. It didn't even growl. Jack said,
I never thought an animal could be so fragile.
You're fragile too. That's no big surprise.
Yeah, but I only broke a couple of bones on it, and now look at it. It just lies there in pants.
Lisa frowned thoughtfully.
It doesn't heal.
She climbed awkwardly to her feet and went to peer
So yeah,
into
the general
cage.
premise of this one, I remember, these are like souped up human bionic cyborg kind of things that can regenerate, and this is like a slag-filled, recently orbitally bombed world, and there's a dog that they find. So it's kind of this discussion, or gradually that unfolds of like what it means to be alive, and like we're losing our humanness as we become these soldiers, these people of sand and slag, so to speak.
For it to begin clotting.
Yeah, I love this one because it was heady in a sort of like, it reminds me of like a Gears of War kind of Helldivers 2 like video gamey world where you wouldn't expect something kind of poignant being strung out of something that's kind of like, juvenile and video game actiony, but that's exactly where it was. And John DeBurge did the cover for this. He was another one that had multiple excellent covers, and this was another one where when just seeing it, I was just excited to open the JPEG. Like, he kind of depicted sort of like a Marcus Phoenix style, large, ultra buff man covered in all of the killing accoutrement that he has, holding like a little pathetic dog that sort of looks like a piece of stringy bacon in front of him. And it just shows you like that excellent kind of like, how far from human have we become that man's best friend is no longer a friend at all kind of like aspect to the story. And I thought that the art perfectly complemented the wonderful story.
Yeah, just he obviously kind of looked at the composition as like weak versus strong, which is how I think it's probably intended in the story, the impact that the dog is having, because it's not just man's best friend, but it's like this, it's like not, it's just a little slice of what it used to be, it's almost barely alive, and that kind of triggers it, that weakness based on these people standing around it that are just so much more massive, with minds that are just so in bigger places, more destructive places. It's a kind of a wake up call for them.
Yeah, and just John has such a great way of just adding in details of like the character has kind of like a Cable-esque 90s Liefeld arm that has something of like a laser undertone to it, and the kind of jagged shredder spikes coming out of the arm. It just kind of evokes like a whole bunch of sort of masculine stereotype imagery, but just always so lovingly rendered. I don't know. It's one of my favorites for a reason.
The blue hair too, that's obviously a thing dudes are going to be into in the future, is buzz tops and shockingly blue dyed hair. Maybe that's natural hair. I don't know.
Maybe. Who knows? Genetic tinkering goes a lot of places.
Yeah, this is a really hyper kind of realistic image. It looks like it's a still shot from a graphic novel or something like that.
Yeah, it's another one where you're like, I want more of this. This is not a short story. Please order this to series.
Yeah, it would have been tempting to kind of focus more on battle scenes and things like that, the badassery. So it's neat that he pulled back and kind of looked at the bigger picture with the story.
Yeah, one to easily sail past the point of the story, but I think he has it exactly in mind.
I mean, John's like a pro, right? Like he's an artist that makes a living doing that.
Yep. Last thing I saw, he had just done like somebody was thanking him for this animatic that he had done, and the animatic was very impressive. So onward and upward for John.
Yeah, one of those guys that every time he can pull a cover off for us, we're just really happy, almost no matter what it is, It's amazing that we get some of his time dedicated to us.
Yeah, and it should be said, like, we do pay a small commission at this point in time, but it's nowhere near kind of like market rates. So the artists that contributed to the Drabblecast are listeners, fans, and people that are volunteering their time. And it's really like crazy the skill levels that have visited their work upon us.
Yeah, there's just so many slices of other human beings involved in the podcast. It's I could never do it by myself. All these little things make it so much more fun to do and have greater impact. Drabblecast 338 was the crevasse, very Lovecraftian. Let me pull this up real quick.
Warning. Darkness at boulders into the wall.
The artist of this one was Jay Holloway.
He froze there, probing the darkness. Then, when nothing came, had he imagined it? He must have imagined it. Garner aimed the flashlight into the gloom. His breath caught in his throat. He shoved himself erect in amazement, the rope pooling at his feet. Vast. The place was vast. Walls of naked stone, climbing in cathedral arcs to the undersurface of the polar plain, and a floor worn smooth as glass over long ages, stretching out before him until it dropped away into an abyss of darkness. Struck dumb with terror, or was it wonder? Garner stumbled forward, the rope unspooling behind him until he drew up at the precipice, pointed the light into the shadows before him, and saw what it was that he had discovered. A stairwell cut seamlessly into the stone itself.
Never a good sign. Never what you want to see in a crevasse. You always want to just, that bleak darkness is comforting whenever you see something like a stairwell all of a sudden going farther down. How could that be here?
Yeah, I think Jay nailed the art on this one because it's stark. It's like Jay depicted the explorer and depicted like a small amount of the actual kind of what you would think is the composition, but that's the story. The story is about darkness, the unseen, about being in a space like that. And so the fact that so little is actually drawn in what could have otherwise been the canvas is exactly understanding the point of the story. So it's just another one of the artists nailing it. And honestly, kind of looks like less being dropped into an ice tunnel, almost like being dropped into water, the way that the kind of lit areas of the piece are. And I don't know, it's so evocative that way.
I hadn't seen it that way. To me, it kind of looked like smoke, kind of, like a match kind of going off, but it's more of like being dropped. I mean, he kind of went literal with the crevasse. He's like, that's the way to, just going to go with the title of the story. Obviously, the author was like-minded in that. It really is what the story's about, is being wedged in darkness and feeling like one little lifeline of light that goes up.
We were going through a real dog trauma period in the 330s.
It's true. Yeah. You're actually all right. I don't know what it was, but we had multiple dog stories that were just like hard-hitting dog fiction.
And I always liked the style that Jay had here, where it's just painterly, where brush strokes matter. And I don't know, I always personally have started from pencil strokes. So somebody that I'm assuming on their process just kind of started from highlights and color first, versus picking out the form and carefully lining everything out. Just has like an immediate impression. I also will say, these covers are often seen at 250 by 250 or 400 by 400, like these absolutely minuscule sizes. So these places where like a story works at that small of a resolution are also kind of a small wonder.
Mm-hmm. This is a great one to see bigger, blown up. You get to see like the details of like the staircase and kind of how dimly lit that is, and the more details. So when you said the brush strokes, is this how did he make? Was this a computer, or was this? Can you tell kind of like what medium he used?
Totally guessing on my part, but based on the amount of texture I'm kind of seeing, I'm assuming it's a digital paint.
Okay.
But yeah, like that, and this is an older piece, so. Harder then, easier now, but like the brush strokes mimicking through like digital means traditional work, both has a neat way, and the color selection too really helped that out with the deep blues and then the reds of the staircase, creating that kind of foreboding aspect to the steps forward of the character. I mean, it just all works. I also really like the small detail of the character depicted as shining a flashlight into the void, and the actual light source of the flashlight isn't hitting anything.
It's like doing nothing.
Goddamn mind. Look for yourself.
Shows you something of the spookiness ahead.
The darkness, just an art question for you here, Bo. The darkness, is that a selected kind of dark? Like, do you have to do anything specific when you're making black happen in a painting like this, or is it like just black, or is there a specific type of shade that you've got to go for?
What's kind of funny with this is, and then this is just like on-screen mediums, is like there's light showing through the screen to make any of the colors you're seeing. So it's never going to be as dark as it could be if it was like a true pigment painted black. But there's kind of artistic tricks to make dark seem darker than it is. So this is like a deep blue that feels like a black just based on both the context and then the other colors that it's contrasting against. So it's just well done.
Yeah, mind for color there. That's kind of interesting.
There are at least 15 dogs now, though she's sure more hide in the bushes, doze or prowl for food. I remember, a voice says hesitantly. Remember is a frame. They did not remember before the word, only lived in a series of nows, longer or shorter in duration. Memory now breeds resentment, or so we fear. I had a home, food, a warm place, something I chewed, a blanket, a woman and a man, and she gave me all these things. She patted me. Voices in assent, pats remembered. But she wasn't always nice. She sometimes yelled. She took the blanket away, and she'd drag at my collar until it hurt sometimes. But when she made food for herself, she'd put a piece on the floor sometimes for me to eat. Beef, it was, and that was nice. Another voice in the darkness. Beef, that is hamburger. The dogs are trying out the concept of beef and the concept of hamburger.
Yes, I love this story kind of referencing Plato's cave. These dogs are kind of wondering, along with her, what the future is, looking at themselves as they kind of emerge and look at their shadows. Who is dog? Who is man? The dogs in this world speak. And so that's the big conundrum, the big change that happens is we can suddenly hear and understand dogs. And so like it's what happens then. And we got two great pieces of cover art from our artist here.
Yeah, that was the fun thing. So Joe Bosch, originally we were going to run this as a two-parter, so I asked for two separate covers and ended up being one part. And so if you head on the website, you can see both. But it also had like a really nice kind of natural break in the story that set itself up for two parts. Just something of a joy to have too.
Yeah, and they kind of link together. They relate before and after.
Yeah, they're of a piece. Joe Bosch, he just did. Prior to this point, had a bit more cartoony colors to a lot of the covers he contributed. So I wasn't anticipating what I got out of this one, and I was genuinely surprised by how kind of like mature and moody it was, which really does fit the story. Like both covers are more about the shadows than they are about kind of what's being depicted. He limited himself to a certain color range, really created this kind of at night thing. And it's like, it's funny with the story, it's such a sort of almost like child. It sounds like something that would be produced for young adults or children if you just heard the premise aloud, but it's a far more kind of mature story than that. And he captured that, I'm trying to find like the right words here. Like his art is often a little bit more cartoony, so the expectation you'd have for the story is something like that, but he's finding this really nice balance between that feel and the more mature story, so it's threading the needle very well.
Yeah, he does. He has like a unique take. I think he had a vision kind of as he was reading the story that he wanted to get across about she's leading the dogs through this wall through the North Park after the change. The moral conundrums of the dogs being able to fit and humans being able to fit in this new world are represented kind of by the shapes and this the Jenga shape of the door and the wall here, allowing all shapes and sizes to kind of get through.
Yeah, it's just the questioning, like you can see what's happening. Like you get the Plato cave in the first of the two, and then you definitely get that Jenga piece sense in the second. So it all like fits in thematically with the story, but also isn't like directly depicting any one thing or like oversimplifying the story. It just like leaves you with questions, which I said it for a lot of these earlier ones, but like if you don't have questions about what the story is about or want to know more, then the art isn't really doing its job. That's why this is so effectively doing its job.
Yep. Another story, got to call us out here for dogs and man putting each other up against this mirror of dog and man like we did with People of Stein and Slag. This has kind of got similar themes to it too. Dogs are just really handy, I guess. Well, let's get to some of you kind of tend to do every other cover art that we can't divvy out, and or do you kind of take your pick of which one? How does your process go? Because you kind of make the decision.
Yeah, it's always with me. If I'm like the story came late, so we made some decisions, or there was a question about being able to license it, and then it's a week away from being published, I will often intercede just to make sure there is a piece of art. Or with like the DARP covers, I'll go in there just to make sure something that didn't have art does have art. Like recently, you got ahead of me, so like the pigeon went out without an original piece of cover art, so I just went backwards and put one in there. So it's always either like where it would otherwise be a blank space, where I otherwise might not feel like an artist has the right amount of time to depict it, and then yeah, every so often I will just cherry pick one that I really like or I feel like fits my style, or alternatively, just so doesn't fit my style that I got to stretch to really make something happen.
What tends to grab you as far as style or just interests as far as drawing?
I mean, I have like my sweet spot of things that I like to do, which is horrible and contorted monsters, sad clowns. Somebody once described my art as entrails being dragged through the dirt, which I always gravitated to as a description. But like things that either seem miserable or too setting in upon themselves. So if I read a story that immediately sets out like that way, in terms of like when I'm reading a story, deciding either is myself to depict it or who from our artist stable might be great to depict it, I find this kind of funny commonality where if you're just visually scanning a Word doc sent that includes the story, and that's how they come in to me from Norman, the editors, about 30% of the way in is always this one paragraph where they describe what you're looking at. You find out if the main character has a gender, if the setting is here, there, you can get a sense for like, okay, is this noir, is this whatever? But there's always that one paragraph that has all of the exposition, if you could see my iPad before I'm drawing something, there's always a screenshot of the story with like the one paragraph that has all the good details. So I'll see that and be like, okay.
I asked some folks on Discord here, our Discord channel, the Drabblecast, some questions. One that just came in kind of regarding that was from Stinkender Case, and it says, are there techniques or methods you've developed specifically to illustrate the content that's weird for Drabblecast?
I think one of the reasons that the Drabblecast has been one of the great artistic loves of my life is because it's just so all over the place that I like to think of myself as a mimic or able to depict lots of different styles, jack of all trades, master of none of them. But I just had to do different things. So sometimes it's Photoshop collage, sometimes it's hand drawn, sometimes it's vector illustrated. I picked out a few for us to talk about, and some of them like visit upon like the different styles. So in terms of like, is one best for the Drabblecast, in a way, not having a specific one as the go-to is kind of the thing I like the most about the Drabblecast. It's like all over the place.
Okay, yeah. This one, we'll start off here, was a B-sides episode we did, The Fungi of Yuggoth Cycle, which is a sonnet cycle. I think it's like 37 sonnets in classical sonic form by H.P. Lovecraft. And we did a production of it. Here it goes.
Has been there, that it comes out of a pharos in a tower of stone, where the last elder one lives on alone, talking to chaos with the beat of drums. The thing, they whisper, wears a silken mask of yellow whose queer folds appear to hide a face not of this earth, though none dare ask just what those features are that bulge inside. Many in man's first youth sought out that glow, but what they found, no one will ever know.
This is like my favorite ever of Lovecraft stuff. I feel like this is such a worth listening to again. These are so fun. I don't know, they're just so good. I think it's like his best work, and they kind of tell a narrative throughout the whole cycle. But this one, I think was probably no brainer for you to grab. You love fungi, you like Yuggoth. It was a match made in heaven.
Yeah, and like early on, I felt weird with the B-side episodes because I'm like, well, if somebody's drawing their first cover, I want them to be in the main feed. So I grabbed a lot of those early. This one I was always proud of because it was my only win for the Reader's Choice Award, which, if you just think about the amount of bites at the apple I've had versus the amount of wins, I'm like, I finally got one.
Being robbed, man. It's like Meryl Streep.
No, yeah. But this one was fun because I always love that, one, there's only so many images of H.P. Lovecraft that are out there, but there's just the kind of one that has become sort of like a de facto logo for Lovecraft, is where he's just sort of looking mournfully directly at the photographer. So I just took that wholesale and worked it in Photoshop, so that's the Lovecraft figure that's there in the foreground. But I don't know, I just always loved that one of just he's supposed to a mask for something behind his face, but also looking desperately sad, but also looking mysterious. Just speaks to how much is layered into Lovecraft's work. So I was happy to have that in there. Just in the particular piece, a lot of it's stuff I just drew with pencil, stuff I lifted from the internet wholesale and worked in through a digital cloth. I was really trying to limit my colors, so it's just black and red, depending, kind of like a Bruce Timm style, way back in the day. Just you have to limit yourself to those kind of immediately and most impactful set of colors. And then there's just all sorts of little things in there, like I hand drew the ghasts that are in the background, found images for the tree, the noose, the well. I mean, there's just so many different images that are in the story, the sonnets, that like you had to limit yourself. I couldn't be going too maximalist. I was saying like the best covers fit so well into 250 by 250, and I couldn't limit myself to more than like 10 different things in there. But I don't know, it's just the way
there's a noose in the sonnets.
Is there?
Yes, I guess. I'm just trying to remember, because I was just now noticed that, and I was like, is that a call to Lovecraft's like racism or something? I don't know. It's got to be in the sonnet somewhere. And then I don't know where in the sonnet is it. I don't know. Maybe just, you just wanted to get a noose out of your system there. Unrelated, I'm sure.
Somebody dead? Well, actually, as I'm looking at it, the noose is too big for the Lovecraft character's head to even fit in. So
and also he's just so low to the ground. He's so tall. It'd be like it'd just be so ineffective. This is a measure of hanging yourself.
I thought, isn't it the well is haunted by?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, there's a well. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Somebody suicided themselves, so far as I remember. Unless I'm just being truly colorful, I think that the noose comes from somewhere.
I think it comes from somewhere. I thought those were night gaunts back there too, but they're with gas.
Oh, yes, well, either or. My God, now I'm revealing my lack of knowledge of the bestiary.
We got another here from you that you did. This is an early one. Sleep Age, man, episode 52. This was like the early days of Drabblecast. Pull this up.
I can't decide whether I should be proud or ashamed at the impact my invention has had on the world. Perhaps more importantly, I can't decide if I want to reveal my second invention. Yeah. It's far too cold today to go outside.
Yeah, this was but like this is only like a 10-minute long episode. That's crazy we doing this short, but such a cool concept. It's like this, you can farm out your energy of sleeping all day and work as a professional sleeper. I didn't know you were doing art this early at 52.
Well, so this is a DARP one. So this did have a cover, and then I was picking and choosing after the fact. And I always loved this story because I feel like, being as painfully existential as I am, like, you just think about the amount of hours and what you choose to spend your life on and how much you're going to regret every last thing on your deathbed. And if you just picked out your pie chart, it's like, how much time have I spent as a working class individual doing something at the behest of somebody else that I don't like, that I don't care about, that I never think of twice, given any amount of distance? And that's why the Sleep Age thing was just such a fun and apt way to describe it. It's like, yeah, you're just giving away your life in bits and pieces for money. I gave away 8 hours a day, every day, if 8 hours.
Right.
It's like this person's sleeping Rip and Winkle into. Anyway, just I love the story, and so when I went back for it was one of my first picks. Funny story about this one. So if you go and look at any cover that I've done, I don't think I'm as talented drawing just from imagination as Gerald or Bill or many of our artists. So I'm very frequently either using a photo I took of myself or myself for the reference. So you'll see me very, very often. This one was one where I took a photo of myself in the position, but then kind of drew it freehand off of the photo. And I thought it had the nice blend of not being too close to the real thing, but owing enough to it. Anyway, so it's me lying there with beard and hair in the canister with all the sleep aid things applied. My mother, after the fact, saw the image, so without communicating to her, and she said it made her cry because it looked so much like me in a casket.
It really does, man. You made your mom cry. That's just, I guess I made your mom cry in a sense too. And the author did. There's a lot of people responsible for your mom's tears. That really looks like you. Were you rocking that beard at that point?
I mean, I was able to use artistic license to beard myself up, but yeah, it looks pretty close to. I'd have to dig it up. I might actually have been clean shaven, but I don't remember.
Well, when you die, I think your hair keeps growing, so that's like part of it too, probably in the overall context. Man, it's crazy that they would have to, like, in this technology, they hook these things up to your cheeks. Like, what could they possibly be getting or implanting, like, in a cheek suction?
Just keeping him rosier. I don't know.
I think so. Yeah. And you also look really sad in this one. Like these stories that can make you sad, like the metaphor being that a lot of us do this when we're awake, in jobs and stuff that we kind of hate. You're farming away part of your life for other people essentially, and you're more or less asleep. So yeah, I usually only get so far in my thought process here before I'm like, okay, I'm just moving on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to the literal drabble of the Drabblecast, it's like short, punchy kind of ideas that if left, you do most of the work. It's like, this is a great idea that hits you quickly and then stays with you for you to ponder. And like, it's just those kind of episodes. Like I referenced the pigeon earlier, that kind of thing. It's like, it's not a giant, deep story, but it's like a fun little punch of a story. And I think we deliver those especially well.
It's like a scar that never leaves the story. It's so long ago. It's like 2009 or something. I mean, I wrote a song after this story and put it in this episode just because it was that, like, I couldn't stop thinking about it after I read it.
Yeah. Speaking of go back a beat, like using myself in art, I just was like going back to trying to pick out the episodes that we'd be talking about. And if you look at number 425, you can see me again. I used a different style where I was using a vector illustration, just kind of pretty much directly tracing from the photo. But this one is both me and my wife, Annie, and it's depicting a man looking at a dead body. So just in case my life ever takes in a true crime kind of turn, I would say, lawyers and cops, please look to episode 425 for the initial signs.
So that's your wife dead that you drew there. And then,
yes.
Okay. Does she know this?
I turned her head the other direction and I picked.
How did your mom feel about this one, Bo? Since it was like literally her.
Yes, but I mean, she's happily alive in numerous other covers, so you don't have to worry about that.
Cover.
In the story, the bodies are metaphysical; they're not actually really dead. But I was happy with like the angles and the colors of that one, so that's all that matters in the wash.
Yeah, the angles really were. I mean, her head is just the opposite direction than a head should normally be.
Look,
this was episode 363, The Totals, another episode that Bo did the cover art for that we did full cast.
With sketches that didn't even come close to capturing what I really look like. You know what the mugger did when I came in through the crack in the wall? Took out his bloody iPhone, he did, to get a picture of me for his Facebook friends. I was gobsmacked. Of course, I ate his brains anyway, but it wasn't exactly the most filling meal I have had.
Pierce commiserates.
It's like you can't take 2 steps anymore without tripping over an asshole.
The door opens again, admitting more patrons. One is a transparent, man-sized pillar of smoke, churning like an oncoming storm. The other is a creature made out of shiny black tar, who appears to have made a hobby of rolling about in broken glass. More follow. There are beings with flesh that flows like filthy water. Beings who appear to be 2 mismatched halves sewn together by untalented craftsmen. Beings who reek of ruptured bowel. and beings who could almost be men, but for the obsidian jewels that shine from the places where men would have eyes. They laugh and say hello to one another, and swap tales of children they snatched into the empty dark spaces beneath beds, of the unlucky wanderers they found.
You had so many monsters to pick from in this one, dude.
Yeah. So this one, it begs to be drawn. There's no way of listening to that if you have an artistic bone in your body and not wanting to just do something from it. So like, I was so excited with this one. And actually, this is one I drew twice. I don't know what the M4A has in it. I think it's the older cover, but I originally, because Clutch, I think, is the main character. He's so unique and Hulk-like and disfigured and strange that I'm like, okay, I have to draw him. And I did him completely freehand. But then I looked at it kind of after the fact, and even though I liked the first cover, there's something about the fact that this is like a menagerie of real life serial killer monsters. It's like it's a really interesting place. It reminds me of like a Neil Gaiman Sandman kind of comic vibe. It's realistic in tone because it's not played for laughs or hyper real. It's just kind of like, these are horrible things. And so when I had the original result, it was just because of my abilities as an artist. It wasn't that realistic looking. It was a bit more cartoony, and I felt like I had to go backwards. Well, actually, and cartoony fits. It just absolutely didn't fit here. So I went back and kind of picked out this kind of, I pitched together like a lot of different photos and photo reference, and then just kind of roto drew over it. So some's freehand, some is kind of drawn over photo. But I like wanted to pick out this classic Norman Rockwell image of kind of like the cutesy diner, because like the diner setting is a big piece of the story, and bring that in. And then just drawing in the characters looking like real enough to be physical or in a physical space, but like obviously since they're monstrous, having a bit more of the monstrous aspect to it. So like, you know, Clutch's shoulder is drawn kind of like broken looking or improperly aligned. And then I had the fun detail of, you know, his name tag is just up on his shoulder because he don't know no better. But like the other character, Pierce, having like looked at the story again to go back and review this, I'm like, oh, I missed that he has heads on the spikes that are in his chest, and I didn't draw any of the heights. Pissed at myself.
Well, maybe they come in and out like xenomorphs do with the little head inside. You know, they might be retractable.
Like old Freddy from the early Nightmares, where he had like if he pulled open his coat, he had like the faces perforating out of his plastic chest. I don't know if you can remember that mental image.
That's like, yeah, that's definitely a throwback. Does that happen a lot that you've missed a little detail like that? I mean, the things like the name tag on the shoulder would be so fun if I could draw it. Like, I think that would be like one of the more fun aspects of putting together pieces, like throwing in the Easter eggs like that are really personal to you. But do you ever feel like you miss stuff afterwards? You're like, oh, should have had a head on that spike.
Oh yeah, like all the time. Because like you pick out that one paragraph where it's like, okay, all the good stuff is here. And then you go out of your way to draw it, and then you're like, oh my God, the character was this the entire time. It's like I got their profession wrong. I got the setting wrong. This takes place in the future, and I chose to pick out some like 30s cover art to
when do you know, this kind of ties in with questions I've asked writers before, but when do you kind of know when you're done with something? When is it done to you? You could keep drawing, you know, little things here and there. Is there a deadline that kind of does it for you usually, or is it more Bo that's in control of when something's done?
No, the wonder of the Drabblecast or the niceness is it's never on a deadline. It's never, well, sorry, it is on a deadline sometimes, but you have to set your own, and it's really just either, not that you get bored with it, but just, you know, you're going to keep going into some overwrought place where nothing good, nothing positive is going to keep coming out of you continuing. So it is that point of morbidity where it's like, okay, I know this piece is over because I'm not making it better by continuing to work on it. I could spend endless, like the most recent one I did, oh shoot, I don't have it up. I think it's the most recent episode to whenever this is recording, He Who Ruined Everything. I could have just kept going on that absolutely forever. And there was just a point where I'm like, okay, I did the background I needed to. I put in the boards on the window. I have the character. I have my exaggerated anatomy. What else am I going to do? Nothing. And it's already too much detail for, 400 by 400. So I just was like, stop. I'm stopping.
Yeah, I've said everything I need to say in this, now it's just speaking.
Also another one of my body in the foreground, my body in the background. I was nice enough to get my friend's head to use. So it's a Frankenstein of parts.
Oh, okay. So you had to, so when you were mentioning before how you like the shapes and the modeling, that's kind of that's a regular thing in your process is models. Okay. So AI probably comes in handy for that.
No, well, yeah. No, my poor murdered wife constantly having to take all these photographs of me. So I'm like, no, I need to be touching my glasses and I need to be moving my leg here because this, and I'm always using terms where she's like, I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you mean. Because in my mind, the perspective absolutely matters. And I'm like, move the camera here. And yeah, it's so tedious in our world. But there's me like that baldness doesn't exist on me. And I had to draw out my beard and I had to draw on this and that other thing. So it's always like a merger of from life photography traced over using an iPad mixed with original, like just hand drawn kind of stuff. I don't know. I like to employ a lot of different methods.
Right. The times that you had to draw me, you always ask for like a picture of sorts, and then you kind of manipulate that to make me look like I got a bigger package or something like that, per your contract.
Well, you're like, I always send in the first draft, and you're like, bigger, and then
That's I'm almost there, colder. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, Bo, it's been great talking to you.
Yeah.
I hope some folks learned about art and get their iPads and tablets, and you can hit us up, join the Drabblecast Discord, and chat about what we talked about here today. And Bo will probably be on there and answer some questions for you if we can twist his arm.
Okay, yeah, at me. Artists always welcome to join the rotation. Artists that are hearing this that were in the rotation that just haven't heard from me in a while. If you're hearing this and you're interested, please Bo at Drabblecast, and I will respond.
There you go, Bo at Drabblecast, and he will respond. So we'd love to have more artists, more great visuals to extend the podcast. Cool. Well, thanks for talking to us, man.
Yep. Thank you.
I just woke up to say, happy anniversary, baby. Still remember the day when you ran off to the church with me, baby. Your mama told you, honey, don't you marry that man. He doesn't have a job, no, he doesn't have a plan. I said, baby, don't you worry, gonna make it somehow. So tell me what your mom and daddy think of me now. I'm a human battery in a sleep-age economy, trying to feed my family and put my kids through school. The sleep bank hired me to harvest my energy, and that was alright with me, but I'm beginning to see the truth. I'm so tired of sleeping. How's that for irony? What's the point in even dreaming if all I'll ever be is a human battery? A human battery.